Welcome to the adventures of self. Conversations with ordinary and extraordinary people as they explore what it means to be self-expressed. Come on in. Join the adventure.
So, welcome, Sam Led, to the Adventures of Self.
Oh, it's a pleasure and an honor to be here today.
Likewise. It's interesting. We were before we got started. We were kind of getting excited and already sharing stories that it's really good with a guest to spend a little bit of time arriving, just sort of each person having a chance to speak about what they're going through, or just to allow other things to fall away. But it's very interesting with you. There were a few stories, and I immediately thought, we kind of save this. Like, it's beautiful to have the pre-story, but to save it, right? And in particular, you were just sharing something about.
Yes. Keep going. You got it.
Polishing the lens of the heart.
Yes, polish it. There's the interesting thing is my partner and I, who my lady is setting up house in Asheville, North Carolina, and we're going to spend time here in Santa Barbara and Asheville. And every morning we together do the Hanuman Chalisa. I'm sure you've heard of great Hanuman. He's the monkey god who's, he instills courage, and he helps polish the great lens of the heart. And when we do the Chalisa, it's like, I have a cheat sheet here. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm presenting Exhibit A, which is it's 40 lines, and we chant it. And what happens is we don't know what's going to happen. And then at the end of the chant, and you're supposed to do it 108 times. Of course, I don't have all that time to do it. It's a long day. It's a very long day. At the end of the chant, we just drop in. We're so present. And the things that come out of our mouths, I mean, we've been together over 3 years, and we have some kind of cosmic love. We grew up within 40 miles of each other, within an hour of each other in South Florida, and have all the same friends, very similar connections. I went to USF and UF, and she went to Florida State. We're around the same age. We even look alike. Our birthday's 10 days apart. I can go on and on and on. And when we drop into the present moment, even though the Chalisa is it's 600-year-old poem, chant, song written by Tulsidas from, in a different part of the world, and I'm Jewish and my partner's Catholic. There's such a love connection. We get so connected. I am really Sam and she's really Jeannie in that moment. And we don't need the Chalisa to do that, but it's interesting that practice, that it's not even a habit. It's just this routine that's wonderful that we tap into. We just get so present, and it is like polishing that lens. It's one avenue. You don't need to do the Chalisa or any kind of prayer to do it, really. It's all on offer there in this moment.
I like the concept that obviously we have a heart. Yeah. We're all alive. We're breathing. Our heart is beating. But this speaks to the metaphoric heart. The heart of love. There's a heart that pumps blood through our body, and then there's a heart of love, and that there's so many things in our lives, in our world, that start to close that off to metaphorically, like, create the artery closings and the atherosclerosis of our heart, and presence and mindfulness, it's talked about and bandied about, and with good reason. And what I like here is that there's this sense that, yes, you and your partner have an amazing connection and it's always going to be there, but that you take time to, polish off maybe the dust that settled from the day before, the night before, the whatever's happened in your work or personal lives. And that there is this, I think the thing that I was talking to somebody recently about this, we can have presence and we can have awareness, but it's about, remembering and refocusing that presence and awareness kind of at all moments.
I love that, because if you asked me over 3 years ago when we first met, if we'd be chanting the Chalisa, two kids who grew up in South Florida, Kendall, Florida, and Boca Raton, I'd be like, what? I haven't done that since my bar mitzvah. So when we peel back that layer of and getting down to the present moment and presence and how important that is, that you don't need to be in Greece, and I don't need to be in Santa Barbara. You can do it in the Bronx, you can do it in Nova Scotia, wherever you are, rich, poor, healthy, sick, young or old. What I noticed and why the work that I share with my clients is so wonderful, and I walk the walk and I hopefully talk the talk, even though I might stumble over my words when I'm in an ADHD moment, is that we have this world that we're navigating, this world, this world of the form and the formless, right? And you talk about this with your clients too, I'm sure of it, that we're all just one thought away from that moment of presence, that beyond the conduit between the world of the form and the formless is this supercomputer between our ears called the brain, that has an operating system that hasn't been updated since the Paleolithic era. And so sometimes where we have this multipath distortion sometimes during our day and when we're just caught up in the busyness of life, is sometimes thought it contaminates things, right? And beyond the contamination of thought is what I share with my partner in the morning, or what you share when you're walking on the beach, or when you really drop in with your clients. And, all of us are just one thought away from seeing that. And it took me just getting really curious about it. And I realized that the conversations that I have with clients, a lot of it's mumbo jumbo. We don't even talk about what's the elephant in the room, right? It's two people connecting, and we all drop in together into this state. We could be talking about how wonderful Yellowstone National Park is, or how much they love the talking heads. It doesn't really matter. And then we're there. And then I introduce and share the understanding, the principles that I share with my clients. And then we get into the nitty gritty.
Yeah. And I think I can relate to that sense in working. It's a different way, but I really recognize that sense, because we carry around the baggage of, bands or connections with something that seem real, they seem important, and it's useful, to bring that up, not necessarily to dwell in it, but to give it air, right? And it's like, okay, cool, that we've given that a sense, and now we can get to what's really here now.
And I think that once we see like the game the brain is playing innocently, like once you see that there's so much beyond this algorithm, this kind of this simulation going on, that we're not living, we're living in this world of thought. We're not living in the we think that we're living through our circumstances in the outside world, but we have it backwards. I think we're living through a world of thought and thinking, and we think that's reality, and the brain is doing its best to keep us safe. But innocently we all get caught up, and we forget we forget who we are. We forget that we do our best work. We fall in love. We write our greatest masterpiece, or we get our new gig, our new job when we're not in our thinking. And, I have clients that they're stuck like you do. They're just not having a good time at work, or they're, having issues with their spouse, or they're just not, they're caught up in their own story, in their own thinking, and they're blaming whatever outside circumstances. And I would look at them, and I would just smile at them. They're like, "Why are you smiling at me?" And I'd say, "Well, and I wrote this down and I sent it to some of my clients, and if I can share. So, and it's the same statement for every one of my clients, because we all do this, you and me and everyone. We all get caught up in the machinery of our thinking. We all get into low moods. We all have anxiety sometimes. And when we see what the trick the brain is playing on us, where none of that's true, it's all story and allegory, right? And polishing that cognitive lens and getting real presence, and seeing that, and seeing your heart, and seeing who you really are. Again, it's not some esoteric stuff. It's actually a spiritual truth. So I wrote this down. So, and I send this to my clients every time they're really caught up and they're blaming their partners or their coworkers or their boss. It kind of it brings them back down, and it gets them out of their head, because being in the head is just a symptom of us believing the nonsense going on in our heads we think is real. So I wrote this down, and I said, this is what I send. I'm going to want you to consider, right? I'm going to want you to consider that you're experiencing a thought version of it, and that you can have a different relationship with it. Even in the face of stupid shit going on, you still can have a different relationship with that thought about it. So it doesn't mean that shit's not going on. It just means that the relationship you have with your thinking in the moment is completely sideways, untrue, even if it feels real, because we want, our brain convinces us, when we feel our thinking, it feels so real. It's like, holy shit, London bridges are falling down, when they really aren't. They really aren't.
Yeah, in the work that I do, very similar. The work we do. Sometimes we have
the work we do.
Yeah. The service that we offer, and then and also, it speaks to, I think some of what we've individually gone through, which I'd like to get to. As well, yeah, I can't speak for you, but I'm assuming, and I'm certainly speaking for myself when I say I didn't come into this world with an understanding of the brain and the soul and the heart.
They don't teach this at school, and I wish they did, right?
No,
if they did, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
I mean, and whether it's schools or whether it's through family and community, and how it is that we have an opportunity. Like, the brain's a great tool. Like when we need to coordinate how to turn a computer on, and how to get directions, and how to drive from A to B and all that. Like, maybe you can tune into your heart and get all that. I'm sure maybe you can, but it's convenient. It's like, okay, cool, I got to turn left here, do this, and follow this recipe or whatever it is. But what I was going to say is, like, one of the principles or premises that I use is that your thoughts and feelings are not real. Now, I don't mean that you don't think them or feel them. What I mean is that they're not an accurate representation of what's going on. I think that's what you're saying. It's like, you think your thoughts, absolutely. You feel your feelings, absolutely. But where we get caught up is then thinking that my thought, oh, Sam's mad at me because I didn't take the trash out, and now he's going to do this, and he's going to. I really am. Yeah, exactly. He's my boss. He's going to dock my pay, and this is going to happen. And we go through this line of reasoning. It's like, well, here's something that maybe happened or didn't happen, and we create a thought about that. Yeah, and then we create, as you say, a whole story, a whole allegory. about that, and we just assume that that represents reality. And it's like it cuts us off from for me, it cuts us off from the possibility and inquiry, right? Communication, right? Like when you drop in, with a partner, right? You might say, oh, seems like you are feeling upset or angry or anxious. What's going on now? Maybe, oh, you forgot to take out the trash, or you didn't ask me about something that was really important for me. It may be, well, actually, I've got this really important thing at work and I don't know what to do about it, and I'm really stressed, and then you're in a different place with that person, right? And it all goes, I think, to presence, right? We presence actually opens things up because there's awareness, there's openness.
And I like what you just said there about awareness, and what I and with my clients and also in my life, practicing and sharing this understanding that I've been sharing for a while now, is that when we all get caught up and wrapped around the proverbial axle, and we're just in a low mood, we're having some insecure thinking, and we think it's our partner. Our brain wants to find a fall guy for why we feel this way. The brain just wants to keep you safe.
Yep.
But when our thinking goes sideways, like it always does, and it's very normal. It's very, very normal. When we look at it as not normal, well, we're looking at it the wrong way. When we take it personal or seriously, we're really caught up, and we're looking at it the wrong way. None of that thinking, none of that heavy thinking, even though it feels real. When we get anxious, feeling anxious, no problem. There's no problem there. Feeling overwhelmed, there's no problem there. The brain is just telling you to pump the brakes. And when our partners, our coworkers, our boss, even though our job might be on the line, or even our relationship may be on the line, when we see that other person is caught up in some heavy thinking, they're swimming in some heavy, distorted, cloudy thinking in the moment, even though they might be blaming you for the reason why they feel that way, it's not to be taken personal. None of it, 100% of it, unless you ran over their dog, obviously, or you stole money from them and you're just not being honest, or something that was, it's not okay to hurt somebody physically. But I'm talking about everyday stuff, that when people take things out on us or blame us or for our performance, it's not on us, never on us, because in an hour or two, that other person's going to settle. The thinking is always going to settle. They're going to come back down to the present moment. And because thinking is never, it moves through us. It's like weather, we're constantly, we're the airplane flying at an altitude, and the clouds are our thinking, right? We're really the sky in the airplane. The airplane is kind of a good example of it. We're going to have some thought turbulence. We don't have control over it, and it can happen whether we're rich or poor, healthy or sick, young or old, having the best day ever, and all of a sudden we're going to hit some choppy air. But we know it always settles. And we know that's not who we are. And when you take it less personal, when someone is coming at you, or someone is being rude, or someone is pointing out how incompetent you are, even though it doesn't feel good, even though you can feel upset about it, know that the brain is trying to keep you safe, and is going to, in a second, right, come up with a solution. Oh, it's John's fault. Look what John's doing. You need to battle down the hatches because you're going to get fired. What are you going to do? You need to think about, if you do get fired, how are you going to pay the rent next? This future fantasy doom and gloom thinking attached to someone's behavior. It's never on us. And when you take that, when you look at it that way, as difficult as it is, sometimes we all get caught up and we all take the bait sometimes, and we react or behave in a way that's not in alignment with who we really are, which is well-being, calm, resilient, and hopeful at our true essence. When we see it, that's not personal, it's so liberating. It's so liberating. And it's also okay to get caught up and also take the bait sometimes, because we do have this internal GPS guiding us through this river of life, and liver as well. But so, it's so wonderful, because the point of our work that we share, is that we want our clients to have a happier life. We want to have a happier life. We want to have a feel good feeling. We want to be just happy. I just want to have a happy life. I want my clients to have happier lives. It's simplistic. For me, it is. What do you think?
There's quite a few threads that I was picking up, and I think the one thing that I may get back to a couple others, but the one thing that really stands out, came through a couple of times. You mentioned this idea that the brain, or I would say the ego, but whatever you want to call it, just wants to keep us safe, right? There is a mechanism in us that goes to survival, and there's some trainings or methods, modalities, and no disrespect to anybody, but that I struggle sometimes, because there's some, as I say, modalities that may say, like, oh, we need to overcome that, get rid of it, or something, and I think, well, it's part of being human, and it's just recognizing, what a particular aspect of you, me, each person is good at, right? Like, they say, like, don't use a hammer to cut down a tree, right? Like, you go get your saw for that, right? And you don't use a saw to hammer a nail into the wall, right? And so the brain is very, very good, right? It's good at following tasks and doing things, but see, I think, because, as you say, this is the filter. The brain is the filter through which we experience the universe. And then we confuse us, me, you, ourselves with the thought, right? And it's this disconnection from what's actually happening in reality. But it is the one of the values or goals of the brain, the ego. Some limited aspect of it is absolutely to keep us safe, and thankfully for it, let's celebrate that. Like, we wouldn't be alive today if not for that wonderful gift to keep us safe. But I would say it's not a creative tool.
It tries to get creative, but that gets us in more trouble. But it's great for when we're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. And or it's funny, my partner called me up. She's like, Sam, you won't believe this. I'm like, what's up, Jeannie? It was like, I don't know, 7:30 in the morning, North Carolina time. She's like, there's a black bear going through my garbage right now. And listen, we're from South Florida. I've been in Santa Barbara almost 20 years. What do we know from black bears? Okay, her brain was going in, was doing the right things. It was secreting all the right neurochemicals, noradrenaline and all that stuff. So her brain was doing exactly what it was designed to. But what I have, and I love what you just shared there, that there really isn't, the brain's great modulating organ systems, right? It's great doing equations, right? It's great with doing a lot of mechanical stuff. But just like a regular computer, it doesn't know a lot. In fact, it doesn't know anything. Literally does not know anything. It's only as good as the operator typing on the keyboard proverbially. And it's kind of like, if you don't plug your laptop computer into the electricity and turn it on, it's as worthless as a paperweight. It's like my old Volkswagen. It was always breaking, but I still love it. I still love my brain, even though sometimes it glitches. It's a glitchy brain. Sometimes I have to hit Control Alt Delete, but that's okay too. And that's a good metaphor for because who we are is not the sum total of our thinking. And I know that's so easy to say. It's like, well, Sam, you don't know my circumstances. My partner's has cancer, and I'm going to be about to be laid off. I'm like, yeah, it's all horrible stuff, and I'm so sorry that happened, and it kills me to hear this. But you're going to be okay. But at the moment, they can't hear that because they're caught up in some line of thinking that they think is true. That is okay to feel that way. You're allowed to grieve. It doesn't say that you're allowed to feel these things, but to believe the nonsense is true is really, to me, and to a lot of practitioners and to practitioner like yourself, is not only not true, but breaks my heart. And we've all stumbled along, and we all get caught up, and we all believe the story that our brain is narrating, and we all think it's true when it's 100% an illusion. And once we see how it works, and when I tell my clients that you're not broken, there's nothing wrong with you, and you can add as many behavioral modalities to your toolkit, like NLP and thought stopping techniques and cognitive behavioral therapy and you name it, whatever visualization techniques you use. Okay. But what if, just think about this for a second. What if you're perfect? What if underneath the noise, the contamination, sometimes that thinking can collude the system sometimes, that you're perfect underneath your thinking, and that even if all these A, B, and C, and D and the outside world is true, what if you have a different thought about it? What if your partner is sick with cancer, you still have moments of laughter and love and kindness and tenderness and expansiveness? How is that possible if it's London Bridges falling down? It isn't. What is true is the tenderness and the love and the kindness.
Yeah, it goes to the sense of, it's like whatever's happening, whether, because there are also people who, have wonderful circumstances. I was actually in a moment, I'll share something here because, mentioned I'm here in Greece for the summer, and it's a beautiful location, beach, cliffs, sun.
Oh, yes. Sounds wonderful. Keep going.
Exactly. It is.
Right.
It is. I'm very. I consider myself very lucky to have this as an opportunity for working here and for living here for a period of time. And I was sitting on the beach sometime last week, and it goes to this sense that, like, I'm not perfect, right? I have my glitches, right? And I was reading a book about the I Ching, and it was talking about the book called The Philosophy of the I Ching, written by a woman from West Virginia, which has a deep significance to my heart. Both my mother and my father were born in West Virginia. And she was speaking about the values of the I Ching, because there's this concept in the I Ching that, yes, you're consulting with these hexagrams, but there's an entity, a force, a concept, the sage, that sits behind this. And she said that she talked about the values that were underneath the I Ching, and some of the language was quite challenging, and I was, in a way, I was kind of reading to avoid doing a few other things. There were some work things I just didn't really want to deal with. So I thought, I'll just read. Yeah. But I was agitated. My mind was agitated. I was really struggling. And one of the values that she spoke about in the book was gratitude. And she went on to describe, well, this is how, this is my interpretation, or this is the I Ching interpretation of gratitude. it's to really be aware and grateful of where you are, what your existence is. And, that goes to that sense, like you can have somebody, very close friend or yourself, dying of cancer, and yet choose to be grateful that you can eat a peach or hear a bird sing, or whatever it was. And I really caught myself because I could feel I was really agitated. And so this, being sort of reminded of what it means to have gratitude. And I checked in with myself, and I realized I was very ungrateful in the moment. And here I was sitting on this wonderful beach, waves coming in, sun coming down, there's a beautiful cliffside. And I looked and I thought, I don't think I'm grateful for this right now. And, it was a reminder, right? Because like that can happen anywhere, and it was kind of quite laughable, because then I started laughing, and it was like, well, I mean,
Yeah.
if I can't be grateful for sitting on a beach in Greece under the sun with the waves coming in and having the freedom to read a book and have this experience, well, there's a real challenge here.
Yeah.
But it was wonderful just to be met with that, and because like the disconnect almost,
Well, that's and there's such wisdom when you just said it. I love it, because the disconnect is what I'm pointing to. We disconnect. It's like, you're gonna love this. Okay. It's an old movie. I love using metaphors. I'm going to hit you with this, if you don't mind. So a wonderful mentor of mine, Aaron Turner, he's actually across the pond in the UK. He's a 3 Principles coach, and he's a brilliant, very funny guy. He's got a Dudley Moore sense of humor. If you remember Dudley Moore from Arthur, it's just great. And even sounds like him. And his favorite movie, and I'm totally stealing this from Aaron. It's called Liar Liar. Remember the movie Liar Liar, Jim Carrey? In the scene when he's in the bathroom and he's kicking his own ass, right? It's like, you leave me alone, I'm kicking my own ass. And he's punching himself. He's slamming his head into the side of the, in the toilet, in the side of the stall. What you just described is what we all do. It's like, we have moments when our brain glitches very innocently, because we have this thing called habitual thought, right? We have this thing called, these thought programs that we're running, that in the background, always running, that you can't shut it up. That's why modalities, no offense to people that teach modalities, in my opinion, don't work long-term. In fact, it's just layering. The system is designed to settle on its own. We just don't listen to it enough. Because it's so the metaphor for that is the glitch, is that not feeling grateful in the moment. And then all of a sudden we look up and we see this gorgeous beach, right? Or we're in the Bronx and we see our favorite pizza place, right? Across from our favorite bodega. I love New York. Our favorite bodega, or our favorite deli. And we're living in a shitty apartment, whatever where. And all of a sudden, oh shit, yeah, I have a couple of dollars in my pocket. I'm going to go get my favorite slice of pizza. Well, our system glitches. It's kind of like an operating system on an Android or iPhone. It's going to glitch because your brain is bouncing around all day long, like one of the bouncy houses. The brain's like, it's like a bouncy house, the kids' bouncy house. Remember Chuck E. Cheese growing up? Okay. That's the same thing. And so we forget. We have amnesia. It's like we forget for a second. Like your example is beautiful. Like, well, I'm gonna go watch Netflix because I don't feel like doing this work right now. Like I forgot, but that's okay. The system does that sometimes because it's not perfect. And then I remember again. Oh yeah, there's the beach. Oh my God, I'm in Greece. Oh my God.
Well, I'll tell you as well, because I can, I think one of the things that comes up, it actually goes to the point around safety, because I have been, planning something for my work and my business that is a challenge to me. That I know I'm planning something that in my brain, I'm not capable of. It's bigger than I am. It's exposure, right? There's a sense like that's, I just as you were speaking, I remembered that that's actually what was happening. Is the reason I was reading the book was because I didn't want to work on something that I feel called to do, and yet it feels like, oh, this is a much bigger, more challenging way for me to show up in my work, and that's going to expose me. And then the brain comes in and it does the safety function, right? And it says,
Yep.
okay, cool, let's read the book. Let's go back to being a miserable teenager. Let's not remember that we're here on a island in Greece and actually have choice about what to do with our lives, which is actually what was happening. And I just want to come back to one of the other things you were mentioning there, because you were saying like the system settles on its own, and I was thinking about that, not those specific words, but that sense when like the Hanuman Tria that you were referring to, right?
Hanuman Chalisa,
yeah, Hanuman Chalisa. That practice, and when we do breathing practices, when we do mindfulness practices, when we do meditation, right, the idea is that it sort of gives us space away from those thoughts, feelings that are sort of like a thundercloud looming in on us, and it gets us to a part that doesn't need teaching. It doesn't need to, our heart, our soul, our spirit, our higher self, whatever you want to call it, doesn't, it just, it knows. There's a part of us that knows what's right for us, right? But we get caught up in this thinking, feeling, trying to figure it out, trying to maximize or get it right without just being in the spirit and the energy of it.
I love that. And you don't need, and I don't need to do the Chalisa, or none of you need to meditate in order to get there. Hear me out. It's hard for people to hear sometimes because they've been meditating for 30 years and have a guru, and they go, they make the pilgrimage, whatever they're doing. And that's wonderful. And God bless you if you do that. Just like I don't need to be in Santa Barbara in order to experience that, which you just described, that moment, the presence. But what if, and let me throw this at you, but what if the moments that, when you just didn't feel like working on this project because, the fear, which is very normal. I mean, we all, I was anxious coming on today for no reason, just because I was having some anxious thinking. The anxious thinking program floppy disk was inserted into my hard drive at the moment for no reason, and not trying to figure it out, because it is a very human thing and doesn't matter, because now I'm not anxious. I'm just loving this conversation, and you're an amazing coach and an amazing human being. And he didn't pay me to say that, ladies and gentlemen. He'll send me Venmo later. But anyways, but what if, and hear me out, our inner guidance system, this inner GPS, not our brain, this computer up here, not this laptop between our ears, but this inner GPS was just saying, okay, you know what? Let's let your thinking settle about this, I'm not good enough thinking, or I'm, this is scary thinking, I'm exposing myself thinking. What if, right now, I just need to put the engines in neutral for maybe 10 minutes and go read some, or go watch Netflix, right? Or you're sitting in your cubicle at work and you have a deadline and you're just so much, you're thinking, you're anxious, and you're so, it's like Tails. You remember I mean, we're too young for pinball, but the pinball machine, where people that know what pinball is, if you hit the machine, or and it freezes up, breaks, this says tilt, and you can't play the game. They have to come fix it. Or when your iPhone freezes up and you have to reboot it, or take it to the Apple store and talk to what are those Apple wizards, whatever they're called. That's the same thing. So you went and had a timeout, and we beat ourselves up for doing that, because we're in such a performance-oriented society. We think that if we do that, that means that we're further we're kind of self-fulfilling prophecy, you know, that this is another example of how I'm not good enough for this new project. I did the same thing with I had a scope of work I needed to send out. This workshop I was, this gentleman called me about doing a workshop for him and a couple of his friends and colleagues. And I had that imposter syndrome feeling, you know, like, Sam, why do you think you're not good enough for this? Like, this is way above your pay grade. I'm like, wait, is that true? Or is this more of the brain trying to keep me safe? It doesn't want me to take a risk. Same thing. So,
and I think one of the things that I do in my work with clients, and that I've learned myself, right, is to be aware that that's happening. It goes to like, you get a sense of what programs you were saying, earlier. It's like, if you can have an understanding about how the brain works, about how that functioning works, then you don't have to go down the path the whole way. You start 2 steps or 5 steps or 20 steps down that path, and you're like, ha ha ha.
Yeah,
I know where this goes. Cool. I don't need to go the whole way down. Right. I know where this path leads. And there, often there's momentum and inertia, and we just get caught up with it. Right. And the opportunity is to say, yeah, I see. This is what I do. Right. Okay. This is, and like for me, I bring humor to it. I mean, I literally started laughing. I think people started looking at me a bit strange, because all of a sudden there's this guy, right, and he's like sitting on a beach reading a book, and he's sort of laughing out loud. But I was laughing at myself, like how ridiculous it was that here I am in this amazing place and feeling ungrateful in this amazing environment. Right. I was feeling ungrateful because I didn't want to deal with my fear of putting on it was a retreat, right, that I was planning, a men's retreat that I'm planning, and it was just like, oh, I can't do this. Who's going to come, and who am I to lead this? And it was just like, well, cool, like and for me, and it's something that I've learned through my own trial of putting my, being aware of what it is I actually want to create, right? A business, a podcast, a men's retreat, and recognizing that there's a part of me that's absolutely scared shitless, that feels like, oh, this is going to be a failure. Nobody's going to listen. Nobody's going to show up. The thought police or somebody's going to come and arrest me.
The thought police, right? Yeah. With the badges.
Exactly. You're not allowed to think like this. We're going to have to put you in jail.
They have a gold shield, ladies and gentlemen.
and to be aware that that's what happens, and to go through with it anyway, to grow, right? That's transformation, right? To go beyond our current form, right? We go beyond the form that we're in, and in that becomes something else, something new. Yeah. And
what you just shared there is so true for a lot of us, from 100% of us on this planet, whether you're Elon Musk, which is interesting. I don't know if Elon Musk is, he's a brilliant, mad engineer, and I love him for the fact that he's a mad engineer, and he's taken more risks than most of us will take in our entire lives, next to Richard Branson, who just launched himself into space. He tweeted something out. He's like, about this Cybertruck, that funky looking truck. It looks there's a he's launching an e-truck. It looks like something from another planet. It's got all right angles. It's so crazy, and it's going into production, right? And he wrote in his tweet, and the reason why I'm sharing with this is this is exactly what we all go through, even Elon Musk, whether you like him or not, is, if this truck is a failure, I don't care. We're still doing it because I love it so much. I love it so much, whether it's a failure or not. But I really don't think it's a failure, because it's like nothing else. It's not trying to copy everything else. It's completely unique, and that's why we're going to put it into production. And me, I don't know what that's like to be Elon Musk with such risk, but he gets it like we all get it when we're in the present moment. When we give ourselves space to have momentary glitches, momentary lapse of reason, right? I think that's a Pink Floyd song, but that's exactly what I like to point to in myself, because like putting the scope of work together with this workshop, it's the same thing, what you were doing. It's, can I swear on the show?
Yeah.
Okay. It was fucking scary as hell, petrified. And I've done workshops before. So how does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Like you were a successful corporate lawyer. Just hearing that, I'd be scared out of my mind. But you did it. You went to law school. You took the bar exam. I mean, I can see myself. The bar exam in itself scares the hell out of me. It scared the hell out of you too, taking it, and I'm sure. But you did it. I mean, we all are that comedian going up on stage for the first time, when even though we've done it so many times.
Well, I was sharing a story. I was sharing a story that I heard. I mean, I assume it's true. I've heard it in different times that, it shows up because we think it's like, oh, it's Sam, it's Taylor, it's whoever's listening. And that's true. But it's actually everybody. You know, as you say, like, I mean, I don't know Elon Musk. I assume that he goes through that sense of doubt and fear, and he
100%.
And he's like, well, this could be a failure, right? And there's a story about Henry Fonda, right? The great actor.
Yeah, Jane Fonda's father.
12 Angry Men, all these.
On Golden Pond.
On Golden Pond, yeah. And, he was doing, I think he was acting into his 90s. And he gave an interview sometime, I think in his 80s or something. And he said that he'd started acting when he was a young 20s, probably, at least, maybe even younger, I don't know. Been acting for 70, 80 years, something, ridiculous. And he said that every time he was going to perform, before he was going to perform, he would get violently ill. Every time he had to go on stage, every time he had to go on camera, he would just lose it. He was petrified of fear of getting it wrong, but he had a calling. He was like, yeah, but this is, he's like, this is what I'm called to do. This is what I know is right for me. And he would go to the toilet and vomit, just be sick to get over that, and then he would go perform.
And that speaks to the fact that no matter how brilliant or creative or talented all of us are, and we all have superpowers within us, even though some of us, it takes a little bit longer than others, and that's okay too. We think that we can beat the system. We think that we can beat the system, and we can't. And we all would turn back to Henry Fonda throwing up in the toilet. I mean, I can't tell you how much I've procrastinated writing this scope of work, but that's okay too, because it was meant to be that way. Now, for those of you on deadline right now, panic some more. Don't panic. Panic some more. Don't panic. It's like that Coldplay song, Don't Panic. You're going to come up against some heavy resistance. But once you see the resistance, and just get curious about the resistance, it's like, how could any of that be fucking true? I mean, you've come this far. You have to see how beautiful the system's working anyways, even though your brain is glitching, because it's like a laptop computer. It's a supercomputer that's gonna glitch. It's not who you are is perfect underneath all that thinking and underneath the zeros and ones going on between your ears. When you just get curious that you're not the sum total of your thinking, that there's nothing wrong, that you can't get it right. You can't get it wrong. As hard as that for your conceptual mind to hear right now, when the hard drive is spitting, trying to figure out, what is Sam talking about? How does he know? I mean, right now I'm suffering in my thinking right now. I'm feeling insecure. Yeah, but wait an hour, let it settle, and then call me back and tell me how you're feeling. It's like, couples therapy doesn't work because they're trying to use techniques and solution, and maybe it works for small percentage of people, not to poo-poo couples therapy. It has its purpose. But once you see that when the person that is constantly complaining about the other partner, once they see that they could have a feel-good feeling and they come back down within an hour from their, the distorted thinking, that their quality thinking a lot of the times may be distorted, that in any moment they're going to come back down to the present moment, and they're going to have a different feeling about their partner. You don't always feel pissed off about your partner, just like you don't always feel scared and have reservations about your workshop, that retreat that you're going to be doing. Because I'd sign up for it. I mean, I would.
Cool. Well,
totally.
come to Greece in the first week of September.
It's going to be brilliant.
Yeah.
And even when it doesn't feel that way.
No, like, and so, it goes to choosing it. Yeah. You're right. You're absolutely right. And, like, I just want to, like, because we've kind of skirted around this, but like, I think you and I, the learning that we offer, right? It's not to say like I'm right. It's based on our experience, both personally and professionally, right? In working with clients, but also personally, right? You've gone through hardship. I've gone through hardship. I mean,
major.
You've written a book about it, right?
Yes. It's called Fearless. Listen, what I say to my clients, what I say to myself, until I see experientially through living life, is that don't believe in what I'm saying. Explore for yourself. It's like you see it. We all have mental well-being. We all have gratitude, hope, and resilience within us. We just don't pay attention to it enough, because the signal, it's not Las Vegas screaming at us. It's not lights and technicolor. It's a very calm voice. And sometimes we don't hear it because the volume in our head is so loud. It's like, hey, listen, explore for yourself. Don't listen to a word I'm saying. That's okay. I hope you hear it.
Yeah. And, that sense of exploring it, I wanted to bring this in because I was thinking about, your, you mentioned, the likes of Elon Musk and Richard Branson, and, they're very popular, or they're very, well-known characters. And as you say, some people may not like them, right? And then there may be all sorts of reasons you may not like them. But what I do really respect about both of them is that they explore and they experiment, and there is this sense in them that this life that we have it's a game, right? So we have this opportunity to play, experiment, explore, and that's where like the joy and the fun, the happiness actually comes from. I mean, even in a failure, be like, wow, this is amazing. We just like absolutely destroyed this, company or whatever it is. Like,
we lit it on fire. Right. It's like that was that movie Office Space.
Yeah.
With the swing lines stapler when he blows up the building in the end, and everyone's out of work, and some people go work for the next company across the street, and then the guy, the main character, I think his name is Ron Livingston, who's a brilliant actor. I don't know what happened to him. He was brilliant. He goes to work doing what he loves to do, which is construction. He's a total computer nerd. He's doing construction and he's having the time of his fucking life.
Yeah.
Who said that it has to be so scary all the time? Nobody. You're thinking, which is completely made up in real time by a brain that loves you, but it's sometimes like a helicopter parent, and there's nothing wrong with you. None of you. I don't care if you're diagnosed in here. I know this is hard for a lot of people to hear right now. And I know if someone's listening, or even a therapist or a psychologist listening to me right now that's been practicing, finding out what's wrong with people for 50 years. And I'm not pointing fingers and, diagnosing people, working on their problems and, finding the cause and going back into their childhood. Man, that's exhausting even talking about. What if, that's all past shit. Like, what is important is right now. Like, there's mental well-being in all of you. I mean, there are practitioners that share this understanding, and it's not some cult weirdo stuff. It's actually, it's how the system works. Again, don't listen to what I'm saying, explore for yourself. I've gone into prisons, people that are lifers at San Quentin, or into psychiatric hospitals, people that have been institutionalized, which is horrible. And it's, you know, my heart goes out to people that are going through all that. And the practitioner says, you know, there's nothing wrong with you. You just think there's something wrong with you. And you've been listening, the volume's been so loud for so long because you've been conditioned to believe it. And our conditioning is part of, is the culprit, and our beliefs. But what if you can peel back the onion of your beliefs, or the layer of belief and conditioning, to see what's really there? You know, there's a very famous practitioner. His name is Sidney Banks, that was in San Quentin, in a room with 400 prisoners. These are hardcore prisoners. These are murderers and rapists and bank robbers. And he got up on top of his chair and he says, "You guys are all innocent. You just don't know it." He doesn't mean that there's no consequence for action. He doesn't know, you know, these people at that time were working with a level of thinking. Obviously, the quality of their thinking was pretty low on the consciousness scale. They thought the time was right, and they unfortunately acted on their crazy thinking at the time, distorted thinking, right? Well, you don't have to believe every thought that comes through your cortex, because it's like a computer. You know, it's like Siri or Alexa. Alexa sometimes plays music for no reason. All of a sudden I hear, you know, Alexa playing Bob Marley in the middle of the night, and I had to unplug it one time. The same thing with our brain, does the same fucking thing. So if prisoners can see their own psychological innocence, and see that what's on offer is love and well-being and resilience, and that they are not the sum total of what happened 50 years ago, even though they're in prison, even though they're in the system, they end up feeling more free than people on the outside, freer than so it is possible, if we see beyond the calamities of our temporary thinking. Now, that doesn't mean that, you know, life is easy. You know, life is a contact sport, right? So, you know, you're going to get your knocks sometimes, but at the same time, it's also pretty damn wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, I was speaking to somebody recently on the show from South Africa, who did an art piece around, based on Nelson Mandela's prison cell in Robben Island. And, you know, like, it's a fascinating story about Nelson Mandela, because, you know, he was a freedom fighter in the 50s and 60s, fighting the apartheid government, and was labeled a terrorist. And when and I've been to South Africa, and a friend of mine, in the middle of nowhere, there's, you know, South Africa is a very big country, and in the middle of nowhere, we're driving through, and he says, "Oh, we should go to the capture site." And he kept saying the capture site, and I had no idea what he was talking about. And it just, in the middle of nowhere, all of a sudden there's this massive cars, thousands of cars parked on the side of the road. And there is a park and a monument and a museum that mark where Nelson Mandela was finally caught by the South African government in whatever it was, like 1967 or 68 or sometime in the mid to late 60s. And this commemorates where he was captured, which I thought was fascinating in and of itself, right? And you know, the authorities had a choice, right? They thought about killing him, and they reckoned that if they did, that it would martyr him, and it would actually make things much worse. That they would, you know, everybody would revolt. So they put him in prison, and they left him in prison for 27 years. He stayed in prison, and he, you know, the idea was that by putting somebody in prison, and it's a tiny cell, you know, I mean, it really is a small, tiny cell, one little cube of a window up above that you couldn't even look out, that just let a little bit of air in. And he speaks about the fact that, you know, this concept of freedom, right? The idea is, well, we're going to put you in jail, and we're going to take away your freedom. And he realized that wasn't theirs to do. that he gets to determine his freedom. And his book, his famous book, Long Road to Freedom, I mean, speaks about this and plays on this. But he was very aware of what he was doing and been very focused on what he was creating. It just took him a long time to create a unified South Africa. Because for him, freedom wasn't the physical circumstances of where he was placed. Freedom was his own mind, his own heart, what he could actually, what he's in control of, which are his thoughts, his heart, his way of seeing the world.
Well, and that's a beautiful example of what I share and what I've been pointing to during our conversation is that, we all have this thing called psychological innocence which means that we're all going to get caught up. I might get caught up later today in my thinking. The quality of our thinking is everything. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. We all get overwhelmed. We all get anxious sometimes. We all, get depressed sometimes. Sometimes it turns into more a longer session of depression than we want. But when we are in that state, and what Nelson Mandela saw, and what all great, you don't have to be Nelson Mandela to see it. You can be anybody and see it. Is that the quality of our thinking and our conditioning is what we really need to look at. That it's not true. None of it. It's what the brain is sucked up because the brain is a computer. It has a memory, but when you see what the dance of how our brain works or how our thinking works, you don't have to take it personal when the quality of your thinking goes sideways. And that's where all the great gurus, all the great spiritual teachers, Nelson Mandela, even some really powerful and successful people in the world, whether you like them or not, is irrelevant. See every day, like that's where people can, sing the national anthem at Yankee Stadium with, tens of thousands of people and do it, or Michael Jordan hitting 3-pointers all day long. He probably threw up and put his head in the toilet, an hour before. But when we see that we can't ever beat the system, it's like, sometimes we think, oh yeah, okay, I got you beat. I can figure, I'm fearless. Yeah. In moments you're fearless, but then moments you're scared shitless, and that's okay. And the prison of the mind is what I share about in my book, Fearless. And thank you for mentioning that. And it's about my journey. I had two major life events that I share in my book that someone would look at and say, I don't know how you're talking right now to Taylor right now in Greece, and you're in Santa Barbara. I can't believe I'm still in Santa Barbara, which is the most amazing thing ever. I'm very blessed. And so once we see that our just like earlier, we were having some technical issues with the Wi-Fi and the sound. That's a great metaphor for our thinking. The quality of our thinking, we have no control over, right? And again, I tell this to everyone. Again, I tell this to my clients: don't listen to what I'm saying. Explore it for yourself, because I'm not a guru. I'm just Sam. And so, just like a distorted or a Wi-Fi connection that's not working, or if those of you that are Gen Xers that remember multipath distortion and FM radio, when there was some wonderful rock stations in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, especially in DC, some great rock stations. When the signal goes out, or when you're driving through mountains and you lose the FM signal, that's the same thing with our thinking, because the brain, again, is a computer. It's not who you are. It's part of the enchilada, and it's doing its best to translate for you between the world of the form and the formless. And the brain doesn't understand the world of consciousness and the formless, of who we really are. And you and I mentioned this to you when we had our pre-interview conversation about the brain is kind of like Google Translate, right? Right. It's like, it's exactly what the brain does a lot of the time. It's like, you know, you want to impress somebody who's Swedish or German, and you just met them and you write them something. You go to Google Translate and you want to sound really pithy, and you type it into the Google Translate and it comes up with some, it looks like it's right, some German, and you send it to them and they respond back to like, what? That's not real German. Where did you get that phrase from? That doesn't mean anything. It's all mumbo jumbo. Exactly. So, you know, that's exactly how the brain works sometimes. And that's 100% okay. But then the brain is brilliant. The brain is brilliant. You know, there's no handbook to higher consciousness. There are shepherds and guides like Taylor. And sometimes I think I can be helpful, but it's all inside of you. And Taylor and Sam can remind you who you are and what you're capable of, and how what you're built, what you're made of, which is love and well-being. You know, I'm actually stealing this metaphor because it's a wonderful descriptor of how we see ourselves. You mind if I share it? It's a little okay. We're diamonds covered in shit, layered in lipstick. It's so great. It's not me, it's Michael Neal, and I love Michael Neal. He's a great coach. I mean, come on, it's so good. But that's the truth. And we're never going to beat the system when we think sometimes we are, but we're never going to beat it, the system. And that's okay. But once you just like let go of the controls and see that, then when we're caught up again and our quality of our thinking is shitty, you know, not to make those important decisions and go read, go watch Netflix, or in your cubicle, just like sit in your chair and take some deep breaths, which I love your video, by the way. Once, twice, thrice.
Yeah, that's all you need, you know, like 3 breaths. It slows everything down. Yeah, you know, like I love that metaphor. It feels like a good place to start to, because it brings us full circle. You know, we were talking about this idea of polishing the lens of the heart, right? And it's like, well,
yeah.
You know, you were saying, like, you know, diamond covered in shit and with lipstick on. And it reminds me, you know, just like as I was thinking that, it was like there are these, particularly like when you see clowns, there's a particular movie I'm remembering, I can't remember what it is. Maybe it was a Joker or something where like he's taking, where you have to take the lipstick off, right? And there's, you know, because there's this effort to really like put this on to cover up all this presumed imperfection and flaws and ugliness. And at some point, right, the lipstick comes off, right? And we can go through this moment of really smearing it off, you know, taking the effort to take off that lipstick. You know, that's we can see through our own vanity to see that that's something we've put on. And I think the shit is, I think a lot of people have to answer for the shit. I think the lipstick is
the answer for the shit. Yeah, exactly.
I think you and I and everybody else like put the lipstick on ourselves. I think we can acknowledge that, and it's relatively, it may feel very exposing and vulnerable, but it's relatively easy to take the lipstick off. The shit, you know, that's our society, that's our school, that's our parents, and not only parents, because they got from their parents and their parents and their parents, you know, it just goes back, right? But actually, you know, you don't have to do that much. You just have to polish the lens, because underneath it all, as you say, there's a diamond.
And all of you are diamonds. All of you, every single, whether you're in prison right now or you're, you know, in Greece or wherever you are, the what you speak of, and I love what you said there is, you know, everyone's just doing their best with the level of thinking they have in the moment. And again, it doesn't let people off the hook for doing bad things. it doesn't mean, it's all psychologically innocent. It doesn't, and you can be mad at people for doing bad things, but um there and again, there's consequences, but at the same time realize that if we're not the sum total of our thinking, and that it is made up, which I see the illusory nature of it, and especially with my own mental gymnastics that I do, falling off the balance beam a lot. That when we get quiet, when we sit still with our catastrophic doom and gloom, future fantasy thinking, like my phobia driving on the freeway when there's no shoulder. It's crazy. On the 101 free, I don't know, you've spent some time in California too. The notorious Hollywood freeway, when there's construction, I'm scared shitless. But in my mind saying, you don't have control, you're losing control. You're losing control. There's a great song we grew up with in the 90s. You might not remember Josh Wink. It's called Losing Control. It's and it's repeated over and over again. I look at it, I'm like, oh my God, I'm feeling like I'm going to drive off the side of the road. I'm going to lose control. But then I'm like, oh, I see the game. I see the nonsense the brain is pulling to keep me safe, because it doesn't know any better. It just loves me. But the brain thinks that thought's going to keep me safe, which is total malarkey. And once we see that, we see it all the time, but we forget, and then we see it again, and we forget. We it's wonderful. And I was able to stay on the freeway and without driving up the freeway or having a heart attack. And it feels real, and it's very visceral, because we feel thinking. We are in this experience of our thinking, not in the experience of the reality. Because if we did, we'd see everything outside of us as neutral, but we don't, because it's colored by this narrative called thought and thinking. But once we see that it's a hoax, it's the greatest neural Ponzi scheme next to, what's his name, Madoff.
Madoff.
It's like Bernie Madoff in our brain, when it's the quality of our thinking is not at its best. And your inner wisdom, when you wanted to like go do some reading because you had some, you were really sped up in that moment, is okay. Because that's what your wisdom was telling you. But we beat ourselves up for watching Netflix for half an hour, or sitting in our cubicle at work and just breathing because we have a deadline. But what that beating ourselves up part is kind of like the scene in Liar Liar, where he's punching himself in the face in the bathroom.
What we do, we punch ourselves in the face.
Yeah.
But we don't have to.
No, but it's funny. It's
definitely funny.
It's so funny. It's so funny, like the voodoo that we do to ourselves. Because all of you are diamonds out there. And the covered in shit part is the layers of conditioning, right? It's our belief systems. But once you deconstruct it, it's what gets you to Greece.
Yeah.
It's what gets you to doing retreats, brilliant retreats in September, workshops.
Yeah.
That's the alchemical gold there. I mean, I don't know how the can opener works.
Cool, Sam. I feel like we go on for quite a while, but I
love it.
I feel like we've reached a good place to draw this to an end. And I was thinking, like you mentioned, I don't remember the song, but you mentioned I think that's a Pink Floyd. Funny, I was looking. It's really funny how synchronicity.
I'll look a second.
It's really funny how synchronicities work, because just before we were going to come on, I looked up something. I was like, oh, let me look up something Sam led, Fearless, and I put those into search engine, and about the sixth thing down, I don't remember what it was. Said Pink Floyd something, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. Why would that happen? But clearly you brought that in, and it reminds me now to say to everybody out there, being a diamond, in the words of Pink Floyd, shine on, you crazy diamond.
Yep. Is that crazy? And crazy in a good way. But my favorite song in the entire world is "Fearless." It's on one of their first albums. It came out in 1972, and if you listen to the lyrics, you'll see what I'm pointing to. But all of you are diamonds, covered in shit, laid in lipstick. What matters is the diamond part. This is awesome. I had a great time, man.
Thanks so much, Sam. And everybody else, shine on, you crazy diamond. Wipe the lipstick off, polish the shit. You are all diamonds.
Yes, wonderful. All right, brother. Well, thank you so much.